Welcome back to the Faith Bible Neighborhood. We're in our second week of the series, Won't You Be My Neighbor? And we started out last week by giving a nod to Mr. Rogers and the influence that he had on our culture and the world. Now, one of the things that we loved best about Mr. Rogers and his neighborhood was the stability, the love, the sense of belonging. Each and every week, each and every day, we were invited in as friends. After 31 seasons, the neighborhood never changed. Think about the routines in the show. Mr. Rogers pops in the door. He takes off his coat and he takes off his shoes and he puts on his sweater and his sneakers and he shows us what he's brought that day. We'd watch a video that the mailman would bring over as a speedy delivery, and Mr. Rogers would take us on a journey to feed the fish, maybe do a craft together, and take a walk through the neighborhood of make-believe. Mr. Rogers never took a cue from the fast-paced world that we live in, right? Slow and steady was his game. And because of that, we could always count on his neighborhood being a place of safety and a familiar place. But we could also begin to take it all for granted. It's always there, it's steady, it's always available, and then it's not, and we realize what we have lost. Life happens, and because life just keeps happening, we take things for granted. Then maybe a trial or a pain or even just change shakes us out of that. And I bet you that 5 months of disruption has reminded you of something that you have taken for granted in this life. Heck, walking into a building without having to think about the last time you had a fever or a cough. Coughing in a park without being keenly aware that now all of a sudden people have questions about your health. Heck, being able to make it through allergy season without people thinking you have the plague. For me, going out on a lunch date with my wife or catching a movie with the family on the weekend, where did those things go? Now, slowly and surely they're coming back, but we've experienced a lot of loss. We've taken a lot of things for granted. And we can also take relationships for granted if we're not careful. The family that's always been there with you, but maybe you've pushed them into the background. The marriage that just doesn't get as much attention as it used to because you're both just so busy trying to make ends meet. The child who all of a sudden you realize has gone from 10 to 18 in a matter of months. My son Thad is finally able to get his license, and it hit me this summer that these are the last 2 years with him in the house before he goes off to the military, if everything goes according to plan. Relationships are so easy to take for granted. It's even possible to take our relationship with God for granted. Think about this. The creator of the universe and all the good stuff that we see around us, and we end up pushing him off to the side because we focused our eyes on other things. This is why when the scribes come and ask Jesus what the greatest command is, Jesus reminds them, number one, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And we read that last week in Mark chapter 12, verse 30. Love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's a pretty dedicated love. Do you hear the holistic language of that command? Do you love with everything you've got? Now, the series is entitled, Won't You Be My Neighbor? Because Jesus wraps his two commands up into one. One is priority, love God. The other is outpouring, or the result because of that number one command to love. When we started our conversation last week about what it looked like to follow Jesus' top command, we talked about a little thing called the Shema. As you might remember, the Shema is a prayer that the Jewish people would and still do say each and every morning and each and every night. The condensed prayer goes something like this. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. And it was said that this should be like the first and last breath coming out of your mouth each and every day. For God's people saying the full Shema, which is a number of scriptures, it's a reminder that God is king. There is a blessing in serving and following him, and there is redemption for his people. It serves as a reminder of their relationship to God so they never take it for granted. What a great thing that is. We all have short memories, and if we're not careful, we will forget about the great grace, the awesome love, and the awesome purpose that God has for us as we live our lives. Jesus says that the greatest command is the one that reminds us about our relationship with God. Now, for many people, a relationship with God is a really, really abstract idea. You may say, yes, I believe in God, but he's out there somewhere and I don't really know what to do with him. I've been told that he's in control of everything, that he knows everything, and that everything is working out according to his plan. But when I think about the problems of this world, I just don't know how to square brokenness with a God who is cheering me on, but way, way off somewhere out there in the cosmos. There are others that say, I just can't believe in a God that I can't see, that I can't experience with my physical senses. Now, I know there's some people out there, and I know many of you that are listening today that have a really close relationship with God. And you probably say that you feel his presence each and every moment of the day. So, when we look at what Jesus says about the most important thing you can do is to love the Lord our God, we might have a million different ideas on what that means, and even a lot of uncertainty about how to do it. How do I love a God that I can't see? Now, one of the beautiful things about the Bible is that it's not a religious text on how to appease God. I would dare say that there may be that may be the view of a lot of people that we know, that they believe the lie that if I just do the right thing, then I will be good in the end. And if there is a God, he's going to count all the positives on one side, all the negatives on the other, and he'll have to be good to me because I've been so good in this life. Or you might know people on the other side who have just given up because the scales in their minds have tipped so far toward the bad that there is not enough time in this life to try to make it up. The message that Jesus is bringing to us is not follow a religion, but enjoy a relationship. And the beauty of the Bible is that it's chock full of stories and testimonies about people's relationship with God. Ultimately, one of the foundational messages of the Bible is that of a God who desires to be with his people and does everything to make that happen. At the beginning of the book, if we go all the way back to the beginning of this book, the beginning of the story is about a God who is walking and fellowshipping with the first people on the planet, and they rejected him. And so later on in the story, he pulls another family aside and says, I want to be your God and I want to bless you more than you could ever imagine if you will walk with me. And then that family gets big and it becomes a nation, and God says, I'm going to set up my tent in your midst so that I can fellowship with you and walk with you again. And so you have the imagery of the tabernacle, and you've got a temple, which God's presence is right in the middle, right there, living in the middle of his people, which is truly extraordinary because in the world of that time, what would you have had in the middle of a temple? You'd have an idol. That was the God you worshipped. All the other nations had idols in their temples that they would worship, and the God of Israel says, there's no need for an idol, God, to take that place because I am going to live right in your midst. I'm going to be the living God among my people. What's fascinating is that when Rome finally had enough with the rebellious Jewish people, they came in and they destroyed Jerusalem around 70 AD. The Roman general walked into the holiest place in the temple, the middle of the temple, holiest place, and he noticed that there was no idol for them to worship. And his conclusion was that the Jews and Christians, as well, he lumped them together, were a group of atheists. Who doesn't have an idol that they worship in the middle of the temple? But the story of the Bible is this living God that comes and lives with his people. And what we see in the Bible is not just a collection of do's and don'ts, but the testimony of people interacting with this living God. Now, if you're familiar with the Westminster Catechism, it frames our purpose this way. It asks the question, what is the chief end of man? And it answers the question by saying this: man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. The author of Psalm 116 gives a glimpse into what it looks like to love the Lord our God fully. If you will, can you turn there with me to Psalm 116 for a few minutes, back in the Old Testament, Psalm 116. And it says this, Psalm 116 says this: I love the Lord because he has heard my appeal for mercy, because he has turned his ear to me. I will call out to him as long as I live. The ropes of death were wrapped around me, and the torments of Sheol overcame me. I encountered trouble and sorrow. Then I called on the name of the Lord. Lord, save me. The Lord is gracious and righteous. Our God is compassionate. The Lord guards the inexperienced. I was helpless and you saved me. Return to your rest, my soul, for the Lord has been good to you. For you, Lord, rescued me from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling. I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living. I believe, even when I said I am severely oppressed. In my alarm I said, everyone is a liar. How can I repay the Lord for all the good he has done for me? I will take the cup of salvation. I will call on the name of the Lord. I will fulfill my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. Here's a man who's been through hell and back. When he talks about the ropes of death being wrapped around him in verse 3 and the torments of Sheol overcoming him, he's saying that life was a living hell. He was feeling completely hopeless, and all he could see around him was trouble and sorrow, grief and despair. The pressures of this world and the pains of life were all consuming for him. But he opens up with this. He opens the psalm with this. I love the Lord. Why? Because he took every negative thing out of my life? No. Because he gave me the riches that I needed to live a comfortable life? No. He says, I love the Lord because he has heard my appeal for mercy, because he has turned his ear to me. I love the Lord because he is near to me and he hears me when I am hurting. He hears me when no one else hears me. He hears me even when no one else is listening. I love the Lord because he is a God that is available. He's near and he leans into what I am going through. This is why I called on the name of the Lord. This is why I cry out, Lord, save me, because I know that he is right there and to do the saving. When the author says that he feels the ropes of death are wrapped around him, he's using language of isolation. He is feeling cut off. He cries out, and when you have to cry out, it's because you're feeling alone. It's because you're feeling isolated. Now, there are probably people who are crying out right now. Maybe you're one of them, or maybe you know someone who is crying out because of isolation. We've spent a good portion of this year in a place of isolation. And the emptiness of those relationships that we took for granted, they begin to weigh on us. Emptiness can be a heavy burden. And emptiness can create fear and anxiety in our lives. This is why it looks like the suicide rates in the country are going up, because people are experiencing fear and anxiety and they don't know what to do with that. Because the once full life that they thought they were experiencing is gone, and we don't know what to do with the hole that's left inside of us. Pastor Newhoff up in Canada says it this way: the fear and anxiety we're feeling points to the God we're missing. We Christians, we often talk about the God-shaped hole that we feel in our lives. We were meant to be in a relationship with God, and when it's not there, there's a hole. And filling the hole with stuff that doesn't last, doesn't solve our problems. It doesn't last. It doesn't solve our problems because we have to keep filling it. We have to keep filling the hole over and over again. And the author says, I love the Lord because I realized that he was right there beside me. He never went missing. In fact, he's been by my side this whole time. In verse 5, he goes on to say that I feel his grace, the gift of love that I didn't think I deserved. I see his righteousness. He's not going to let the injustice I've experienced go unpunished. He's watching out for me. I know he is full of compassion, and his arms, I feel his arms of protection around me. My soul can rest because God has been so good to me. Every other god in this world is looking to be appeased, is looking to take in order to keep their power, keep their authority. This world is going to keep on changing and throwing new things from all directions, but the God who hears me, he never changes. The author of Psalm 116 says, I know who my God is, and he doesn't need to take in order to be in control. In fact, my God already has the position of Creator God, Lord of all, and he freely gives to those who call on his name. Lord, you have been so good to me, and you've rescued me when nothing else could. And the author has felt God's mighty hand of power rescue him from the squeeze of the world. And he poses a very good question to his audience after that. He says in verse 12, he says, how can I repay the Lord for all the good he has done for me? God, what do I have to do to square the books with you? And instead of thinking or saying, well, I guess I have to give my firstborn, or I have to submit myself into bondage for you the rest of my life, the author says this: I will take the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. I will fulfill my vows to the people, fulfill my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. Lord, the way that I'm going to pay you back for all you have done is by fully embracing the cup of salvation that you have offered me. If all the ways that you have saved me could be contained in a cup, I would take that cup and I would hold it high in the midst of all my friends and family, my community, and I would say, look what the Lord has done for me. And my vows of gratitude to you, Lord, I would live them out before those people. The way that I repay you, Lord, is by living. Now you might be thinking, Pastor, this is great and all, but I still don't know what it means or how to wrap my head around a God that I can't see. I don't know where to look. Or maybe my relationship with God has gotten so stale, I just don't know how to get it back. My cup of salvation seems empty. I'm not interested in church. I'm not interested in reading the Bible. I'm not even interested in being with other people because I feel like I have to put on a happy face. What do I do with that? A God that's close to me, I just don't see it, and I just don't feel it. Let me give you just one word: Jesus. Go back to Jesus. The Apostle John, one of the men who lived and saw Jesus' work firsthand, says this in his gospel letter, the book that he wrote about Jesus' life. And right at the beginning of the Gospel of John, John says this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. There it is again. The story is about a God who wants to be with his creation. And John goes on to say, no one has ever seen God. You're not alone. When you say I'm having trouble relating to a God I can't see, but John says this: the one and only Son who is himself God, he has revealed him. John says that the one who is called the Word, Jesus, and also called the Son, Jesus, has revealed to us who God is in the flesh. When we've got questions, we go back to Jesus. And when the author of Psalm 116 tells us that the way we live our lives with the people around us reflects our love for God, Jesus says in Mark 12 the same thing, that the love we have for God spills out in the way that we love other people. We like to split the two. Hey, I've got my relationship with God, and that's the vertical thing. And oh, hey, by the way, I've got my relationship with other people. That's the horizontal thing. Jesus says the two of them play together. They're connected. They're intertwined. But we get caught up in how do I actually love my God who is spirit, the one I can't see? God seems so far off to me, and he doesn't understand the problems of this world. Jesus comes and says, I'm going to take on the flesh of humanity. I'm physically going to walk on this earth with you. I'm going to experience life with you. I'm going to experience joy with you, like when we go to that wedding. I'm going to experience what it means to go without food, to go hungry, like when he's fasting in the wilderness. I'm going to experience what it means to lose friends to the sicknesses of this world, like the death of his good friend Lazarus. And I'm going to experience what it means to feel like God is far from you, like when he went to the cross and he cried out, Father God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus says, I'm going to reveal God to you, and I'm going to show you how to live. And when the world gives you rules and it gives you regulations to follow, I'm going to tell you just to love. When the powers of this world say you have to follow us and do what we say and do it just the right way, I'm going to tell you just to love. When you feel strong and superior, Jesus says, I'm going to tell you to put that down and put on love. When you feel weak and at the end of your rope, weighed down by the burdens of this world, Jesus says, I'm going to tell you that you are in a perfect place to receive my rest and to turn that into love. When we need to see God, where do we go? We go back to Jesus. When we've forgotten about the grace that God has offered to us, we go back to Jesus. When we get all high on ourselves, we go back to Jesus. When we see the world around us in turmoil and it makes us mad, we want to fight back. Maybe we feel like we need to fight so that we could win. We go back to Jesus. Jesus has revealed to us who God is and God's character. Jesus has revealed to us how God reaches out to take care of his people and to offer a way of hope even in the darkness. Jesus reminds us that we are not alone and that God actually does come near, and his ears are turned toward us so that he can hear the cries of his people. In fact, the power that Jesus lived by, he offers to give to us as well. The power that he submitted himself to in order to do God's will, he's made available to us. Galatians 4, verses 4 through 7 say this: when the time came to completion, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law so that we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then God has made you an heir. Here's the story of God. He sent the Son to walk with and redeem his people. And Jesus sent his Spirit into our hearts so that we could know that God is near to us. And where the world wants to make us slaves, God is making us sons and daughters. This is the God who is near. This is the God that the author of Psalm 116 says is near and has turned his ears to hear and has shown his grace, his compassion, his righteousness, and protection to those who have called upon his name. And the author of Psalm 116 says that because of God's love for me, my response is to hold up the cup of salvation, hold it up high for everyone to see. When we go back to Jesus, the world becomes a whole lot simpler and our job becomes a whole lot clearer. We can focus on the hell that we see all around us, but when we do that, it's like we put on blinders on our eyes and eventually that's all we see. God says, I've got my eyes on you. Will you turn your eyes to me? I'm afraid that if we keep fighting the battle on our own, on the world's terms, we're going to feel like the guy who wrote Psalm 116. The ropes just keep getting tighter and tighter around me. The more I struggle and the more I squirm, the tighter they get. And I'm afraid that the weapons and the systems of the world are being picked up more and more frequently by Jesus' church. When the world says that this and that addiction will fill you up, it will fill the hole in your heart, we forget that all they are temporary fixes. When the world gets louder, our voices get louder. When the world gets violent, we turn to solutions of violence. When the world gets to hate and starts throwing hate, we throw hate right back at them. And the ropes of death and the torment of Sheol start to wrap us up in a living hell. We want to break those bonds. So how do we do it? What do we do? First, we go to Jesus. And if you don't know him, go and check out what he's all about. If you do know Jesus, go back and let him remind you of the great love that God has shown to us all. The Gospels and the Bible are a great place to start. Another thing that we can do is embrace our emptiness. Don't try and fill your emptiness with more stuff. Don't try to pass over the emptiness as if it's not there. We've been empty during this time of COVID, and we can't just stuff it under the rug or wish it would go away or cross our fingers hoping that things will go back to normal. God's not only with us in the joy and when things are going right, he's also there in the struggle. And when we have an empty heart, the world is going to try to get us to fill it up really, really quickly with other stuff. But God says when you are empty, that's the perfect time to lean into me. So maybe it's time to reevaluate or evaluate our spiritual disciplines and make changes so that God gets more and more of our focus each and every day. The Jewish people say the Shema each morning and each night to remind themselves of their relationship with God. We're forgetful people, and maybe we need to look at some reminders that we can build into our own routines to keep us focused on what is truly life-giving. Again, I stress that this isn't about doing the right things or chalking up points with God. This is about living a life in a relationship with him, making relationship priority. And as we're going to do over the next few weeks, we can focus our attention on living out the commands that Jesus has given us. Command number 1 and 2, but really one command, to love. When we experience the love of God and in turn let that love fill us, we are better able to let that love flow out of us. It's called getting our priorities straight. We're not going to be really effective with Jesus' second command if we don't embrace the cup of salvation that God has given to us. And this is an ongoing process. It doesn't stop. I love what Charles Spurgeon says when he was asked by an evangelist on a train. Some guy stopped him and said, "Hey, are you saved?" And Spurgeon said this, "I was saved, I am being saved, and I will be saved." And the guy was puzzled. I was saved. I have taken up the cup of salvation that God has freely given me through Jesus Christ. I am being saved. I am walking with God, and I am becoming more and more like Jesus as I live out the commands to love God and love my neighbors. And I will be saved because I know that God is a God of redemption and restoration, and His plan is to make all things new and to free us from the trappings of sin. We're going to talk more about that next week as we continue our discussion by talking about loving our very first neighbor. And then after that, we're going to start talking about what it means to love the wider community around us. You guys, God bless, and we will see you next week.